What's a story, amigos? This is Kino with some cool stories for today's story time.
First, Salma Hayek reads the story of a little duck who doesn't like the rain.
Baby dawdled. She dallied. She pouted and dragged behind.
Then, a book about two very special people with the same name. This Mrs. Gibson was tall. This Mrs. Gibson was small. Lastly, Ed Asner reads the story of a boy and the precious present he receives from his grandpa.
Everyone agreed that Jake's butterfly seeds were the best of all, except Albert.
Storytime is made possible by a grant from Helen and Peter Bain, so that families everywhere can share the joy of reading with their children.
This could break.
Hi.
Oh, Kino, how are you? We were expecting you.
Oh, hi, Selma. Hi, Irma. Oh, I brought these pictures that my mom took of you.
Oh, thank you. Let's see. You know what? They're not bad at all.
Yeah.
Look, we're not squinting, and we didn't even blink.
You're right, you didn't.
Well, thank you. That was very sweet of her, and I have something for your grandfather.
You do?
Yes.
Whoa. What is it?
This is my homemade cherry chutney. It's guaranteed to be delicious with absolutely everything.
Oh, great. Thanks. Say, do you know what time it is?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Gosh, 4 more hours till my grandpa gets here. That's almost forever.
Well, I have an idea. How about a story? I was just about to read this one to Irma.
Oh, sure. Great.
There's nothing like a good story to help the time fly by.
Yeah.
This one here, it's called In the Rain with Baby Dog. It was written by Amy Hest and illustrated by Jill Barton.
Okay.
Okay. Now. Pit-pat, pit-a-pat, pit-a-pit-a-pat. Oh, the rain came down. It poured and poured. Baby Duck was mad. She did not like to walk in the rain. But it was Pancake Sunday, a duck family tradition. And Baby loved pancakes. And she loved Grandpa, who was waiting on the other side of town. Pit-pat, pit-a-pat, pit-a-pat. Follow us. Step lively. Mr. and Mrs. Duck left the house arm in arm.
Wet feet,
Wailed Baby. Don't dolly, dear. Don't drag behind, called Mr. Duck.
wet face,
Pouted Baby. Water in my eyes. Mrs. Duck pranced along. See how the rain rolls off your back.
Mud,
Muttered Baby.
mud, mud, mud.
Don't dawdle, dear. Don't lag behind. Mr. and Mrs. Duck skipped ahead. They waddled. They shimmied. They hopped in all the puddles. Baby dawdled. She dallied. She pouted and dragged behind. She sang a little song.
I do not like this rain one bit, splashing down my neck. Baby feathers soaking wet. I do not like this mean all day.
Are you singing? Called Mr. and Mrs. Duck. What a fine thing to do in the rain. Baby stopped singing. Grandpa was waiting at the front door. He put his arm around Baby. Wet feet? He asked. Yes, Baby said. Oh, wet face? Grandpa asked. Yes, Baby said. Mud? Grandpa asked. Yes, Baby said. Mud, mud, mud. I'm afraid the rain makes Baby cranky, clucked Mr. Duck. I've never heard of a duck who doesn't like the rain, worried Mrs. Duck. Is that a fact? Grandpa kissed Baby's cheeks. Grandpa took Baby's hand. Come with me, Baby. They went upstairs to the attic. We are looking for a tall green bag, Grandpa said. Finally, they found it. Inside was a beautiful red umbrella. There were matching boots, too. This used to be your mother's, Grandpa whispered. A long time ago, she was a baby duck who did not like the rain. Baby opened the umbrella. The boots were just the right size. Baby and Grandpa marched downstairs. My boots, cried Mrs. Duck, and my bunny umbrella. No, mine, said Baby. Oh, you look lovely, said Mrs. Duck. Mr. Duck put a platter of pancakes on the table. And after that, Baby and Grandpa went outside. Pit-pat, pitter-pat, pitter-pitter-pat. Oh, the rain came down. It poured and poured. Baby and Grandpa walked arm in arm in the rain. They waddled, they shimmied, they hopped in all the puddles. And Baby Dog sang a new song. I really like the rain a lot, splashing my umbrella. Big red boots on baby feet. I really love this rainy day. And that's the end.
Well, that was really a good story. Grandpa Duck reminded me of my grandpa.
Oh, really? How come?
Well, 'cause Grandpa Duck really knew what Baby Duck needed, so she could like the rain. And my grandpa really understands me. He knows what I like, and he always thinks of fun things to do. He taught me how to play checkers, and he helps me build my model airplanes.
Well, Kino, it sounds like you have a grand grandpa.
Yeah, I sure do. Oh, what time is it now?
It's 1:15.
Already? Great. Well, I've got to go to the story place. Thanks a lot for the chumpney.
Chutney. It's like a fruit relish. And you're welcome.
Right. Chutney. Bye, Salma. Bye, Irma.
Hey, Kino, the chutney.
All right. Hi, Lucy. Hi, Talise. Hi, Christopher. This thing's heavy.
What's this?
Oh, it's some chutney from my grandpa.
Wow, well, it sure looks good. Well, you know, you're just in time for a story.
Well, what time is it?
Oh, let's see. 1:45.
Gosh, 3 more hours. I'm going to go bananas.
Well, I can't wait to see your grandfather too, Kino. Look, let's read this book, okay?
Yeah,
It'll help the time fly by.
okay.
It's called Two Mrs. Gibsons, and the story is by Toyomi Igas with pictures by Darrell Wells. And it's a true story. once knew two Mrs. Gibsons. This Mrs. Gibson was tall. Her skin was the color of chocolate. She was born in America, in a place called Tennessee. This Mrs. Gibson was small. Her skin was the color of vanilla. She was born in Japan, in a place called Gifu. This Mrs. Gibson gave hugs that were like being wrapped up in a great, big, fat bearskin rug. "Come here and give me some sugar," she would say. This Mrs. Gibson gave hugs that were like being wrapped up in a light, down-filled comforter. At bedtime, she'd stroke my hair and hum Sakura until I fell asleep. This Mrs. Gibson was loud. She had a big laugh and a big voice, which would get louder when she was angry or when she was singing. And she seemed to be singing all the time. "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." This Mrs. Gibson was quiet. She would cover her mouth when she laughed, so you could never see her teeth. And when she was angry, she'd get even quieter. This Mrs. Gibson had small hands that could make the littlest, prettiest strokes of a pen when she would write our names in Japanese. Kumiki, Akimi, Toyomi, Yoshiteru. This Mrs. Gibson had big hands. They looked like they covered all the keys on the piano when she played her favorite spirituals. "This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." Sometimes this Mrs. Gibson would look kind of sad, and then she would let me dress up in one of the kimonos she had packed away in an old trunk. "These very special," she would say as she tied the obi around my waist. "Don't get dirty." The other Mrs. Gibson's clothes were much too big for me to dress up in, but I liked to wear her fancy hats. "This is my Sunday go-to-meeting hat," she would say as she'd take the long, pointy hat pin out of my hand. "Don't get it dirty now." In the evening in the garden, this Mrs. Gibson would help me make magical lamps by catching fireflies and putting them in a jelly jar. They would glow and glow, and then we'd let them go. Later at dinner time, this Mrs. Gibson would make more magic. Her hands would turn little bits of napkins into a whole flock of long-necked cranes. We would throw them into the air where they would fly high and then flutter down to the ground. "Happy birds," she would always say. This Mrs. Gibson always had a pot of rice cooking. We would eat it with bits of meat and vegetables on it, with plenty of shoyu. Anytime we were hungry, she could take her long chopsticks and stir up dinner in the blink of an eye. This Mrs. Gibson always had a pot of greens cooking. Turnip greens, dandelion greens, mustard greens from the garden. Everything she cooked seemed to take a long, long time. This Mrs. Gibson had short, curly hair that she would oil and braid up every night while she listened to the radio. She liked to braid my hair, too, but she would always give me one big, fat braid that would hang down over my forehead. I didn't like that braid, So I would go to the other Mrs. Gibson, and she'd take it out. This Mrs. Gibson used to have long, stick-straight hair, but she cut it short and tried to make it curly. She said she wanted to be more American. This Mrs. Gibson's other name was Kazumi. Everyone called her Kaz or Connie because they couldn't pronounce Kazumi. I called her Mommy because she was my mother. This Mrs. Gibson's other name was Viola. Everyone called her Vi or Reverend Gibson because she was a church minister. I called her Nanny because she was my grandmother. I once knew two Mrs. Gibsons. They were very different, but they had a lot in common. They both loved my daddy, and they both loved me. The end.
Oh, I get it. The one Mrs. Gibson was her mom, and the other Mrs. Gibson was her dad's mom, her grandmother, right?
Right.
I love doing stuff with my grandpa. He showed me how to make a real sailboat out of a piece of paper. It really works. I sailed it in the park.
What other kinds of things do your grandparents do for you or with you?
They read to me.
That's great.
Just like Lucy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else?
My grandma takes me to go see her sing.
Your grandma sings just like the grandma in this book, huh?
They share their life with me,
How do they do that?
like making my favorite food.
That's a way to show that they love you, huh?
Whoa! Look who's here.
Hi, everybody.
Oh,
Hi, Mr.
Asner. How are you?
How you doing?
Fine. You know, Kino, I heard your grandpa is coming today. So I brought a book about a very special grandfather and the gift that he brought to his grandson. Shall I read it?
Sure, you bet.
Right.
Go ahead.
Here we go. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. This is The Butterfly Seeds by Mary Watson. Here we go. Jake's house was empty, except for the overstuffed trunk in the middle of the floor. Sit on it, Mama, Papa instructed. His sisters giggled as they watched Mama bounce up and down while Papa tried to close the latch. But Jake just stared out the window. He kept thinking about how much he would miss Grandpa. When Grandpa came to say goodbye, he brought presents for everyone, but he gave Jake something special. They're butterfly seeds, Grandpa said, poking around in the little tin box. Just plant them in your new garden, and like magic, you'll have hundreds of butterflies. Are you sure they will grow in America, Grandpa? Jake asked sadly. Grandpa pressed the little box tightly into Jake's hand and nodded. That evening, Jake's family crowded onto the deck of the great SS Celtic. Many of the passengers were carrying balls of yarn with the ends trailing over the side of the boat. When the ship pulled away from the dock, those left behind held the ends and watched the lines stretch out across the ocean. Jake could barely see Grandpa when his yarn line was pulled from his hand. He reached into his pocket to make sure Grandpa's seeds were safe. That night, the ship tossed, rolling the passengers back and forth in their narrow bunk beds. Jake couldn't sleep. He reached over and slipped his hand into his jacket pocket. What do you have there? Benny asked. The boys moved closer to the dim cabin light. "They're butterfly seeds," Jake said, opening the tin. "What kind of seeds?" A few sleepy-eyed children asked as they crawled down from their bunk. Then Jake told them about Grandpa's seeds and the beautiful butterfly garden he would plant in America. "Look what I'm bringing to America," Benny exclaimed. And then the show and tell game began. Benny let everyone hold his real gold pocket watch. Jake's sisters paraded their porcelain dolls. There were spinning tops, hand-painted eggs, musical instruments, and even a lucky horseshoe. But everyone agreed that Jake's butterfly seeds were the best of all, except Albert. "Who ever heard of butterfly seeds?" he said, and just played his harmonica. After 2 long weeks, the ship docked in New York. Papa held tightly to Mama, and the children, as everyone was herded onto the waiting ferry boats. When the ferries reached Ellis Island, the passengers were shuffled into long lines to be inspected. Jake's heart raced as he slowly inched up in line. He wondered if they would take away his seeds. The inspectors looked in Jake's ears and eyes, but not his pockets. Grandpa's seeds were safe. Finally, Jake and his family arrived at their new home on Market Street. Papa led the family up 3 flights of stairs to 2 small rooms. Jake looked out at the narrow, dark alley, cluttered with lines of drying clothes. "Where can I plant Grandpa's seeds?" he worried. The next morning, Jake was up early. Below, he spotted a fruit vendor emptying a crate of apples into his cart. "Could I have that empty crate, sir?" he held out. Before Mr. Gargiulo could figure out where the question had come from, Jake was standing breathlessly beside him. "I'm going to make a window box so I can plant my grandpa's seeds in it. And that's why I need the crate," he blurted out. "You can have the crate, boy, but I don't think it's any good for planting seeds." Mr. Gargiulo wiggled his fingers between the slats. "All you need is a piece of burlap to fix that," called Mr. Ling Chow, the fish peddler. He emptied his catch into an icy bin and handed Jake the empty bag. Jake opened the seam with his pocket knife and spread the burlap evenly inside the crate. Jake hurried across the street to the blacksmith shop to show Papa. It was Papa's first day at his new job, and he didn't pay much attention when Jake asked for his advice. "I need a way to keep this crate from falling off our windowsill," Jake shouted over the ring of the anvil. "Maybe I can help you," someone hollered. It was Mr. O'Malley, the shop owner. He knew just what Jake needed. He hammered 2 bars of red-hot metal into a strong pair of window box hangers. And after work, Papa nailed the box into place. Jake rigged up a clothesline and a pulley to hoist up buckets of dirt from the alley. All of the neighborhood children wanted to help, all, except for Albert, who played his harmonica instead. It was a hot summer. Jake and his new friends climbed the fire escape every day to check the window box. They would hang over the railing and search through the bushy plants for butterflies. "Maybe your silly old grandpa got the seeds mixed up," Albert would mutter. Jake began to wonder if Grandpa's seeds were magic or just a story made up for a homesick boy. Then one day the sky rumbled and a sudden shower drenched the hot, steaming streets. When the sun reappeared, merchants and shoppers filled the street once more. The children went back to their play. Suddenly, Mr. Gargiulo called out, "Look at that beautiful butterfly!" The children chased the butterfly through the crowded street until it flew up to Jake's window box. "Look at them all," Albert shouted. Jake heard Albert's yell and opened his window. "They're finally here, Grandpa," Jake whispered as if Grandpa were listening. "Your butterflies are here, and they like America, too." The end.
Nice.
Wow. I'll bet whenever Jake sees a butterfly, he'll think of his grandpa.
That's a beautiful thought, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, Lucy, well, what time is it?
Oh, it's time for our story picks, Kino.
Oh, yeah. My pick is called When I'm Old With You. And it's the story of a boy who imagines being old with his grandpa and how they'll spend their time together.
And I brought Tanya's reunion. Tanya takes a special trip with her grandmother for a family reunion on the farm where her grandma grew up. And that's our story time for today. So bye-bye. And remember...
Keep a story in your heart.
Oh, what time is it now, Lucy?
It's time for Kino and his grandpa to play some checkers.
Grandpa, you're early. Grandpa.
Today's Storytime books are In the Rain with Baby Duck by Amy Hest, illustrated by Jill Barton. Two Mrs. Gibsons by Toyomi Igus, pictures by Darrell Wells. The Butterfly Seeds by Mary Watson. When I'm Old With You by Angela Johnson, pictures by David Solman. And Tanya's Reunion by Valerie Flournoy, pictures by Jerry Pinkney. You can find these and other books at your local library.
Storytime is made possible by a grant from Helen and Peter Bain, so that families everywhere can share the joy of reading with their children. Storytime is a production of KCET Los Angeles.